You know, we talk a lot about innovation and we talk a lot about creativity, and the thing about it is we talk a lot, but what do we do? When was the last time any of you actually took a box of crayons and painted a picture? None of you guys, you can't do that. You did. One. And we think we're creative. What's our definition of creative? These guys are the masters of creativity. We should be studying them. But luckily for us, we have somebody who actually does study this stuff, and she's getting her PhD in it. She's Heidi Hess von Ludewig, which, if I said that right, was completely accidental. I didn't mean to. And she's studying how relationships and contextual elements influence creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you, Sid. So my name's Heidi Hess von Ludewig, and I'm going to talk to you about my research and then my new adventure. And as you can see, I'm a former pissed off employee, so maybe that'll give you a hint as to why I'm up here. But anyway, I'm from New York originally, and I'm trained as a computer scientist. And I joined IBM after graduating and moved down here. And it didn't take me too long to realize I was really in the wrong place, like that I'm really much more of a people person than a technology person. And so a few years after joining IBM, I joined NC State in a new program called Communication Rhetoric and Digital Media. And I started studying nanotechnologies, but it didn't take me long before I realized that I really wanted to study the workplace and what was going on in the workplace as far as creativity is concerned. And the reason why is because I noticed there's a really big gap in a lot of the ways researchers talk about creativity. There's a lot of research on leaders and being a visionary leader. There's a lot on entrepreneurs, but we already know that entrepreneurs set their own rules. I think that's what Nancy mentioned. And then there's some work on outsourcing, but there's not a lot of research on what in the workplace causes people to be more creative over other things. So I study how workplace relationships influence creativity, and I also study the contextual things. So I'm doing it on two levels: the micro level, way down at the personnel level, and then also the contextual things like the division of labor, the tools that we might use, like whether we use teleconferencing or video conferencing, things like rules, like we have this sense of what it means to be a professional, and they can create standards of behavior in the workplace. So those are some of the things that I talk about when I say contextual things. And what I really kind of came to understand is that there's this long tail phenomenon, where we're all here because, we want to take more control and have more say in the things that influence us. And that's part of the long tail phenomenon where we're kind of socially aware and becoming more of a community. So what I noticed was that there's a lot of talk about leaders being creative, and there's so few leaders, but there's a lot of employees, and there's not a lot of talk about employees being creative. But that's where all the work gets done. That's where all the problems get solved. That's where all the processes get improved. So that's what inspired my research. So I take a look at interpersonal relationships. And when we talk about that, we're usually talking about friends or family or loved ones. But there's ideas about how we support each other in these relationships, like we encourage each other and we don't, shun ideas, and we respect each other and things like that. And that's all well and good, but in the workplace, it's an entirely different context. There's competition, there's time constraints, there's surveillance and performance reviews, and it's how we make our bread and butter. I mean, it's pretty important. And it's an information and knowledge-based context. And in addition, when we're talking about collaboration and workplace work, we're talking about people who bring their in essence, we're little mini contexts ourselves. We have experience experiences in education, and we have knowledge structures that we've connected through time in our own mind. So it's really difficult. You can't just have a bunch of best practices and expect those best practices to be applied everywhere. So one of my theories is that workplace relationships are based on what I call informational intimacy. So, I always say personal intimacy is where I share my soft underbelly. Well, I'm sure as heck not going to do that at work, right? But I do share coveted information that might give me a benefit over a political situation or give me a new skill. And the other thing about the context matters is that oftentimes I see people or leaders say that they're going to take a certain setting, like a certain mixer, and they're going to take it from this orange context and put it in the green context, and they think the ideas that are going to come out are going to be the same. Like, I got to pick on Big Blue for a second, but they always want to be like Google. Well, Google's an entirely different context, so just tweaking a few things here and there is not going to give you Google ideas. So what is CRIN? So CRIN is and I'm an introvert, believe it or not, but it's my attempt at externalizing some of this and making us more aware that some of the things that we take for granted in the workplace really just aren't really there. Like Megan and Barton, you guys were talking about kind of testing some of the system assumptions that you had, and that's what I want employees to do, and I mostly mean employees in larger corporations. So what I would love from you guys is just feedback. This is the first time I've ever talked about this publicly. I love group hugs and cocktails too, so no problems there if you want to give me any of those. Let me see here, I'm trying to, and thanks to my husband Jason, because I left work a year ago so I could finish my PhD, and I'll be finishing by May, so I appreciate him, and Natasha and Betty Crocker, because I made the cookies back there. And these are just some slides we had to put in because I didn't know really about the format that well. I had no idea. But CRIN's mascot is the otter because they're kind of an inventive little animal, and they often are very playful, even though they're natural wild animal. Of course, after giving Sin the slides, I did find out that they actually sort of can beat up little baby seal pups. So I think I have to rethink that whole thing, but whatever. Thank you.